of Acclime's podcast series, Advancing Vietnam, with me, Vlad Savin, as your host.
In this episode, I'm discussing with Rizwan Khan, Managing Partner at Acclime Vietnam, about the potential of the edtech sector in Vietnam, its key drivers for growth, and as well the market entry, investment conditions, and practicalities for foreign investors that are seeking to create value in this vibrant ecosystem. Rizwan, welcome again to our Advancing Vietnam podcast series. Very happy to have you here.
Thank you very much, Vlad.
In recent years, a significant number of investors have shifted their focus towards the education sector in Vietnam as more and more opportunities are abound. Specifically, the edtech market vertical, still in the early stages, but very vibrant and experiencing outstanding growth in the last few years, specifically after COVID. As estimated, the edtech market in Vietnam in 2024 may reach more than $3 billion USD in 2024, experiencing a double-digit growth year on year as well. In addition, the Vietnamese authorities have promoted e-learning initiatives, enabling parents and students to switch their attention towards digital learning and digital resources. In your view, based on your experience, I know as well that you've been part of the education system as well with RMIT in Vietnam here for quite a bit of time. What are some of the growth drivers for the edtech sector in Vietnam in general, and what's your expectations for 2024 of the overall industry?
I think edtech sector is one of the interesting one in Vietnamese market with a huge growth potential as well as the huge growth as well. If you look at the CAGR of edtech sector from 2019 to 2022, it's roughly around 20% plus. Also, there are certain factors. I think the biggest one is the acceptability by the parents and learners as well. So I think thanks to COVID-19, the world has changed and the digital transformation is taking place in every sector in the industry. However, in education sector, the acceptability increased much more. There is not only the acceptability of the online learning resources. In some cases, there are actually preferences where learners, they don't want to commute and they want to sit in the classroom environment where they could learn it either on demand or in real time.
And as well, during COVID, we experienced a significant acceptance and growth, as you mentioned before, within the learning ecosystem in Vietnam, because everyone had to. But the interesting side, and you can share probably later about it, is how the Vietnamese government supported the digital transformation of the education sector, even after COVID, investing in resources in the private and the public sector as well. Going back towards the foundation of edtech, what are some of the core edtech segments in Vietnam within their structures, and how do these compare with each other from an investment potential?
If you look at edtech's segments, so it depends on how we define them. However, from the market point of view, we could divide into early childhood system, where parents are spending more and more money on their children, young children, to learn the technology at a young stage. Then we go for K-12 system that consists of primary and secondary education. There, the focus of students is to look into more supplementary learning resources where they could learn more about their subject if they have interest in, and also they look for something fun way of doing things. And this is one of the things that's millennial and even Gen X, they are actually looking for more fun way of learning things. Then the third segment could be the university or a learning management system. So the learning management system, or LMS, it can be used for both university as well as corporate learning. So companies, they are also moving towards the online learning platform where they don't have to arrange the learning for and fixing the schedule for the employees. Instead, what they could do is they could do on-demand learning where employees can learn on their own pace. Another important segment, which is much more relevant in Vietnam, is the language learning platforms. And these are gaining more popularity in the recent time, and especially after COVID-19. In Vietnam, English language and other foreign languages such as French, Japanese, and Korean that have always been in demand. However, with the online learning platforms, it becomes more reachable to people, even in the remote areas of Vietnam. In addition to learning management system or LMS, we also see that there is a broad learning platform where professionals are looking at uh, upskilling their existing skill set, as well as learning languages. So that is becoming popular. And in recent time, international education becomes more and more popular among Vietnamese students. If you look at statistics from universities around the world, now Vietnamese students are among top 3 or top 4 group of people where they are going abroad. So there's a test preparation platform. They are gaining popularity. For example, SAT or GMAT, etc. So all these segments are very relevant. And with the population of Vietnam close to 100 million people, that becomes a very attractive market from the edtech different segment point of view.
And from a foreign investor perspective, when looking at funding in these segments, the language learning platforms are some of the top channels of receiving these significant investment funds coming out from outside Vietnam more broadly. What's your view, or what's your, let's say, data that you have from a funding perspective when you're looking at the Vietnamese edtech market in general? We know that 2022 and 2023, as I mentioned before, during COVID, experienced a significant growth there, and there was a lot of investment coming in. How do you see 2024 looking from a funding perspective?
It's very interesting. If you look at 2022 and 2023, where there is still the impact of COVID could be seen, but still there's a lot of funding coming in Vietnam for edtech companies such as ELSA or WeHop or Techie or other or Mindex. So they have gained in millions of dollars of funding. And this trend will continue definitely because the market is growing. If you look at the edtech market, as you correctly mentioned, that is $3 billion industry up to that amount. There is potential to grow, and Vietnam is easily among the top 10 countries where the edtech market is growing. And as I discussed earlier, that the CAGR is roughly over 20%. So this trend will continue. And why it will continue? Because there are many reasons for that. It's both from the supply side as well as demand side. um, as parents are moving more towards the technology based learning, so that is from the demand side. From supply side, because there is a gap, there are still sectors that are not covered. So from that perspective, the more players will come in the market, there will be more funding that will come. In general, FDI in Vietnam is coming steadily, and it has been increasing over a decade, and edtech sector is no exception. In fact, I would say that edtech is something that more and more investors are becoming interested in that.
That's right. We both agree, and our experience in the market validates the foreign investment interest into the edtech space in Vietnam through the broad digital space as well within the digital economy. One of the challenges, however, with edtech is that the specific market vertical is not listed within the legal framework in the Vietnamese context, specifically, and with the conditions or the variables that enable investors to understand and to access the sector. Before we delve into understanding what's that market entry process looking for a foreign investor, where do you see the biggest challenge within the Vietnamese legal framework in respect to edtech activities in country?
If you look at Vietnamese legal framework, so there are certain things that we need to consider. First of all, the Vietnamese framework, legal framework, as far as the businesses are concerned, is still at a very early stage of development. Things are changing, and Vietnamese government is taking very strong initiatives in order to make this framework up to the global standard. The second thing is that a lot of activities in Vietnam are controlled, and the purpose is to make sure that the high quality is being delivered, and education sector is one of them. And there are very strict requirements if you want to establish an education institution in Vietnam, whether it is in early childhood or it's a vocational training. There are very specific and strict requirements. And when edtech comes into action, then the things become a little bit more complicated because edtech is somehow is still a gray area where the legal framework is a little bit not specific whether it is an IT related business or it is an education related business. So the biggest challenge is that there is no clear definition of what edtech is. The other one is the complex legal framework, and that is that if any business is coming in Vietnam and they are starting, let's say, an ed tech for early childhood. So, from a core activities point of view, the biggest challenge is whether it is an education business or is it an IT business or is it a content creation business. So all these things need to be considered very carefully when edtech businesses are coming into market, and make sure that they are following the legal requirements very closely.
And one of the core substance of the market entry and the legal framework that governs businesses in Vietnam is represented by the activities of that structure. Activities in the legal framework represent business lines. Each of these sectors that we talk about have specific business lines that are listed within that legal framework that give those rights and access rights to investors to operate within those areas. What would be, from a market entry process, an activity scope or a business line scope for an edtech business in general, in your view?
It's an interesting question. Every business that comes to Vietnam, that business has to define the business line or lines if they are operating in more than one business area, and that will basically determine what they are allowed to work. So the edtech, the same goes for edtech companies as well. When they are coming in Vietnam and they are, let's say, they go for an early childhood education learning system, fine, and then they say that we are going to sell it online, so then it requires another sub license for e-commerce. Then they say that okay, we are going to publish something on the website, so that means then you need to have another sub license. So all these sub licenses are the requirement. So in Vietnam, VSIC codes define that which business lines you are going into, and then from that step forward is that whether there is a requirement for having a sub license, for example, from Ministry of Education, from Ministry of Science and Technology, and what your activities will be. And once you have all these licenses in place, then it is easy to start business. So from the Vietnamese market point of view, uh, any new entrants coming to market, they need to consult with a professional services firm in order to get an advice whether what they are doing is correct, number one. Number two, that applies to both new entrants as well as the existing players in the market, that they need to stay up to date for the new regulations and the new change or any changes in the law, because as I mentioned earlier, Vietnamese laws are evolving and they are evolving very fast. Requirements are changing. In some cases on annual basis, in some cases it would be on monthly basis. So it is really important to understand the legal framework that governs the edtech sector in Vietnam.
And you mentioned before, rightly, that licenses become a very critical point into the market entry process of an edtech firm. And that's because you have licensing requirements and conditions from the education sector space. Then you have, for the technology side, various licenses that reflect if you're publishing something online, if you're selling something online. And as well from the trading side, in the end, it is a trading of a service that the ad tech companies are doing. So if you're doing that online, then you need an online trading license attached to your structure. Website notifications for publishing online, and various e-commerce, potentially licensing for platforms that combine different ways of trading online into a single platform. These are all intertwined within the edtech. That's why I think it's quite interesting for investors as a sector when they're accessing edtech, because they can be part of an ecosystem that combines e-commerce, combines fintech, education, and technology and innovation all in one. And it's not just about a simple solution that governs all in that scenario.
Yes, it's true. And not only that, I mean, there are certain other requirements that may come into effect. For example, Decree 13 on data privacy and protection, that makes it even more complicated, especially for K-12's primary sector as well as the early childhood sector, where the information of young people younger than 14 years of age, that becomes, there are even more strict requirements. So is the overall the regulatory framework as well as the new laws that are coming into action, so that makes it even more complicated. However, having a professional advice will always help the businesses to grow and to understand the complexity in the market.
Hmm. And to kind of finalize this market entry approach for investors and give maybe a case study or step-by-step guidance within this, let's say, complex pathway that they're going to go through, what will be your advice for foreign investors that are looking at setting up an edtech business in Vietnam? What's that first, second step that they're looking to take in the market from a structure setup perspective?
Right. So for any foreign company that wants to enter into edtech market, I would suggest that they should do their desktop research, finding out what is available in market, what are the regulations, etc. Based on that, they could identify their core activities that will form the basis of the business line that they should apply for. And then they will look into the regulations. They could also consult for a professional advice, and then they will also see that whether they are going to need a funding requirement from Vietnam or overseas, so they need to assess those requirements as well. Once they finalize all these things, once they have a clear idea about all these things, so they will look for setting up a company in Vietnam. For that, definitely they may do it by on their own. However, in order to protect their interest as well as from the risk management perspective, it is important that they should seek the professional advice to ensure that what their understanding is correct. Oftentimes, I have seen that clients are coming to us. They have different ideas they heard from somewhere, they found on the internet, which is outdated, and they say that we believed in this and we did that in that way. Could you fix that one? So fixing perhaps will take much, it becomes more painful. It takes much more resources than setting up the right structure from the beginning.
Mhm.
So that if they follow these steps and they have all the licenses correctly in place, they will not have problem in the future.
Hmm. And from our experience when working with the edtech companies or investors looking to develop the sector, um, the approach with the market entry is quite similar when you look at the broad digital space that has various angles of connection, for example, fintech or health tech or others. The fact that the technology is part of that ecosystem of activities that they're looking to do, depending on the solidity of their plans into the Vietnamese market, we often find that foreign investors set up first a pure technology company in country for various reasons, but some of them would be, or the core ones would be, to have a foothold, a presence in the country, to be able to capture the resources of the staff, of the people, and start that liaison and the development of that business. One of the benefits for doing that is that technology activities, tech activities, don't have any restrictions. They are fully available from a business line perspective for foreign investors. Within that first step, they also start understanding the market. They start understanding what they need to do with the relevant stakeholders, who they need to engage to help them within their development process of their business. And step number 2 and 3 would be going towards the education, developing the online platform or whatever that is, and seeking advice into what's the best path forward to develop their business. We've seen that quite often within the fintech space, e-commerce space as well. Health tech and edtech is as well one of these sectors that enables investors to have faster access in the market within the technology side, and then develop and make sure that they're compliant within their business scope in the next stage after they set up the company as a structure.
Yeah, I think it's a very good approach for a tech company that is entering the Vietnamese market without having an existing platform. However, if they already have a platform, as they have something that they want to offer right away, then starting with the IT company is a good point, and then adding more licenses as they move. Because in some cases, obtaining these licenses may be time consuming, and then it will create unnecessary delays.
Mm-hmm. And one last question to kind of bring the conversation into the 24 present time and understanding a bit more about where does Vietnam rank from an investment perspective when you're looking at the region in the edtech space, and what's your expectancy for growth in this year and in the next few years within the area?
If you look at the regional countries in ASEAN, so Vietnam is easily among top 3 or top 5 countries. And then also moving forward, there will definitely be a growth in edtech sector. And that growth is not only coming from the university or early childhood or from any single area. It's a mix. There are a mix of sectors that will play an important role in edtech growth in this year as well as moving forward. One of the important thing is that government has taken certain initiatives that are moving Vietnam towards digital economy. If you look at the innovation index of Vietnam in 2013, it was 76. If you look at in 2023, it's on 46. So there have been progress in, and as well as the development in that area. Also, the important thing for edtech players when they are coming to Vietnam is localization. I have seen there are players that came to market with a mindset that we have a wonderful product that worked in other countries. However, when they came to Vietnam, those products did not work well, not just in tech sector, in other sectors as well, but particularly from the viewpoint of education, especially in early childhood education, where the children are exposed to only a certain way of learning, etc. So in that particular way, they need to localize to fit the needs of the learners as well as to satisfy parents, and then they could grow in the market. From funding perspective, definitely there will be more funding coming in that sector because there's a huge gap, and I believe that in next 5 to 10 years will be very interesting for edtech sector in Vietnam.
Completely agree. And again, thank you, Rizwan, for sharing your thoughts on the edtech market and on the specifics. Looking forward to having you next month in a new episode of Advancing Vietnam podcast series.
Thank you very much, Vlad. It's a pleasure to see you again.
When seeking to understand the regulatory requirements for businesses operating in the edtech space, a case-by-case evaluation is essential for foreign investors to make sure they are up to date with the latest updates from the authorities and they are protected from a company structure and statutory perspective as well. The above procedures and market entry scenarios that we talked about should be predicated by a thorough sector study and a compliant and legal investment strategy.
And many thanks to you, our listeners, for tuning in to Advancing Vietnam podcast series. For more information about this topic, please check out our publications on vietnam.acclime.com. And if you want to reach out to us for any additional details, feel free to contact me on LinkedIn or throughout the website contact details.